Good morning and welcome to everyone. I'd like to start by recognizing some people here this morning. We have Mayor Lisa Murata, our Deputy Mayor and Town Councilors are here. We have several past councilors here and Town Manager John Mayer. I'd also like to recognize the members of the town's public safety forces. These are the people who keep us safe night and day. We have the members of the Rocky Hill Police Department, the members of the Rocky Hill Volunteer Ambulance Association, and lastly, the members of the Rocky Hill Fire Department. I'd also wish to thank everybody for joining us here this morning for our annual memorial ceremony. And today's ceremony is different from in the past, as we will be pausing the ceremony to toll the bell at significant points during the event. We'll be ringing the bell 5 times. This is known as 5 bells, which is a time-honored and traditional signal sent out when a firefighter dies in the line of duty. We adopt this tradition today as we follow the September 11th timeline, which includes 8:46 a.m., Flight 11 is flown into the World Trade Center North Tower. At 9:03 a.m., Flight 175 is flown into the World Trade Center South Tower. At 9:37 a.m., and we'll be pausing shortly, Flight 77 is flown into the Pentagon. We'll also ring the bell when the South Tower collapses at 9:59. We'll ring at 10:03 when Flight 93 crashes in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. And lastly, we'll ring at 10:28, the time when the North Tower collapses. September 11th is one of those days in our history where you remember exactly where you were and what you were doing when you heard the news of the tragedy. For the fire department, on Tuesday, September 11th, 2001, we had a regularly scheduled training session that night. And I remember that Chief Kohanek wisely canceled training for the night. We held a moment of silence for the victims in our respective stations. And what we know now, but didn't know then, was that public safety changed that day. Lessons learned from 9/11 allowed us to become better at protecting ourselves and protecting our communities. If there ever could be a small silver lining, that was it. Now let's fast forward 10 years. And 10 years ago today, we unveiled this memorial on 9/11/2011. And just to review the symbolism, the twisted piece of steel is a skin flange from the 37th floor of the North Tower. Its job was to hold the aluminum exterior of the building to the interior steel support columns. The 2 boxwood squares around the flagpole and around the steel are geographically correct, approximately, to the original footprint of the World Trade Center towers. The bushes around the memorial are mountain laurels, and they are the state bush of Pennsylvania. And lastly, in the front, you can see a pentagon cut into the walkway. Construction on this memorial started around Memorial Day 2011. And the memorial was completed on September 11th, 2011, just a few hours before its unveiling. Volunteer labor was provided by the fire department members, and many of that construction crew are in attendance today. And their work has stood the test of time. And at this time, I'd like to call up Pastor Ron Cox. For those of you who have not heard the story, Pastor Ron spent quite a bit of time at Ground Zero with the Salvation Army, and his mission was provided much needed support during the rescue and recovery operations. Pastor Ron? Want to hold? We'll be holding for a minute for 5 bells. And at this time, per the governor's request, we'll be observing a moment of silence.
Detail, attend, push. Present, pull. Order, pull. Detail, at ease.
Good morning. Since the time I was able to speak, I realized I existed in a world of labels. For the family, I was son, brother, nephew, cousin, and grandson. As I grew, I realized there were many more labels that placed me in a group, but really didn't give any insight into who I was. Labels like male, white, middle class, Christian, college educated. Sadly, I also learned there were many crude, unkind, divisive, and extraordinarily hurtful labels. As with all of us, I learned to navigate the challenges of life and the many labels hurled at me and those others. I was blessed to be raised in a family that taught my brother and I and my sisters to look beyond the labels and see the person inside. I chose teaching as a career and was privileged to help educate and build bridges in some of the worst sections of Philadelphia. Its label was ghetto. After 20 years of teaching, I moved on to ordained ministry and was blessed to serve congregations of deep and rich diversity. On September 11, 2001, while serving in Bridgeport, my emergency response team responded to an unthinkable tragedy that was unfolding before our eyes in real time. My 5-person team gathered within an hour, and we were on our way to Manhattan to do whatever we could do to assist. Once we were off Interstate 95, we experienced no traffic, received a police escort to the West Side Highway, arrived within sight of the pile, set up our emergency canteen, and prepared to serve the needs of those responders choosing to enter an environment of the unknown, danger, and unexpected. Throughout those first hours and then through the night and the next day, something miraculous happened. The labels that I had experienced through my life disappeared. All around the area, hundreds of first responders, volunteers, churches, social agencies, and others were working together, hand in hand and heart to heart, to make a difference. There were no lines of demarcation. There were no labels. Everyone was on the same wavelength. We saw each other as human beings, brokers of help. I must have heard hundreds of times, "What can I do to help? Do you need anything? Are you okay? Do you need a break?" Pickup trucks would drive by and unload amazing amounts of coffee, bread, water, snacks, meat, and cheese. We soon came to realize that the most requested item by first responders was toothbrushes and toothpaste. Because cell phones were not working, I put out the word by mouth, and within the hour, we were inundated with more toothbrushes and toothpaste you can ever imagine. As I look back these 20 years later, It was as if that attack had ripped the skin off of our country, and for the first time in a long time, we started to see what lay underneath, hidden and not often talked about. And what I experienced, we had become a people who no longer looked at labels, but were seeing each other's souls with their hearts. As a society, we were blessed. We could possibly be because the labels didn't matter. What divided us was less important than what brought us together. I think of those who perished. 265 souls on planes, 2,606 souls in the World Trade Center and in surrounding areas, 125 souls at the Pentagon. Beyond the civilians, 343 firefighters, 71 law enforcement officers, plus one who died on United Airlines Flight 93 near Shanksville, Pennsylvania. 55 military personnel who died at the Pentagon. In the past 20 years, 3,496 deaths have been attributed to a variety of illnesses related to the attack's aftermath. Today we gather not just to remember, but to honor. How do we honor those who died? Stop allowing a label to define a person. In these past 20 years, we as a country are more divided than I can personally remember. It is impossible to listen to the radio, watch television, surf the internet, or sometimes in face-to-face interactions, not to be accosted by a label being used purposely to separate and divide. But going forward, how do we honor those who died? Stop allowing a label to define a person. You and I are not better because we are Democrat, Republican, or other. You and I are not better because we are black, brown, white, or other. You and I are not better because we are male, female, or other. You and I are not better because we are gay, straight, or other. You and I are not better because we are Christian, Jewish, Muslim, or other. But going forward, how do we honor those who died? By stop allowing a label to define a person. On that day 20 years ago, first responders put themselves at risk, and many paid the ultimate sacrifice to save human lives. They didn't do it to save only those people of a certain political party or a particular gender or ethnicity, only those who were in harm's way. They did it because they were human beings who deserved to live and to realize their dreams. Human beings was the only label that mattered. But going forward, how do we honor those who died? Stop allowing a label to define a person. Take the time to listen. Just maybe, and I know this may be hard to believe, you just might learn something about yourself, and you just might be wrong. Going forward, how do we honor those who died? Let us have the courage and wisdom to stop using labels that divide and separate by reviving and embracing the nation's label, our motto, E pluribus unum, out of many, one. God bless you. God bless the United States.
Pastor Ron, thank you. Thank you for your homily, and thank you for your service. Well, as Pastor Ron said, when the dust cleared on that tragic Tuesday, 2,977 people had lost their lives, 246 on the airliners, 2,753 people in New York City, 125 people at the Pentagon, and 40 at Shanksville. Included in that statistic were the heroes of the day, 60 police officers, 15 emergency medical technicians, and 343 firefighters, all who bravely answered the call and never returned home. But what these statistics don't show is the extent of the rescue operation. It is estimated that 17,400 civilians were in the World Trade Center complex at the time of the attacks, of which 2,016 tragically perished. But that statistic also provides detail into one of the greatest rescue operations ever conducted by public safety personnel. More than 15,000 World Trade Center occupants survived that day. Let that number sink in. More than 15,000. We also respect the memory of those who lost their lives on September 11, 2001, by remembering the Americans who answered the call to protect our freedom in the war on terror. We mourn the over 7,000 combat-related deaths, and we keep in our thoughts and our prayers the some 60,000 Americans who have been injured. We also need to recognize the lingering effects of the rescue and recovery operation. Through their World Trade Center health program, Mount Sinai Hospital in Manhattan reports that about 40,000 people have conditions linked to September 11th, including thousands with respiratory illnesses and mental health issues. This includes 10,000 people who have developed various types of cancers associated with exposures to the ground zero toxins. There are also between 50 and 80 new cases of 9/11 related cancers certified each month. And that trend does not appear to be slowing down. So as we stand before this memorial, I'm reminded of two presidential quotes. The first being by President Bush, who said, "Time is passing, yet for the United States of America, there will be no forgetting September the 11th. We remember every rescuer who died in honor. We remember every family that lives in grief. And we remember the fire, the ash, the last phone calls, and the funerals of the children." And President Obama said, "Even the smallest act of service, the simplest act of kindness, is a way to honor those we lost, a way to remember and reclaim that spirit of unity that followed 9/11. This memorial was built out of that spirit of service and a devoted sense of volunteerism. And this memorial allows us to have a place to remember what both presidents said and a site to reinfuse that special spirit that we all had after the events of 9/11, 2001. I would now like to call Mayor Murata forward to read a proclamation.
Thank you, Chief. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming out. I just want to take a moment to recognize Chief Garahy and thank him for putting together this beautiful ceremony. He's left no detail aside. It's absolutely tremendous, and it's a very emotional time for all of us this morning, so thank you for coming out. I also want to just take a moment to say a very heartfelt thank you to all of our first responders because, you know, we owe you a debt of gratitude. Our volunteer fire department, our volunteer ambulance, and of course, our Rocky Hill PD. I mean, we every day almost take these people for granted. We know that they're always going to be there for us. And so on behalf of the entire town, I just want to make sure that I say thank you to all of our first responders. And now I want to share with you a proclamation. Whereas America is a country with freedom-loving people of every race, creed, national origin, religion, who place a high value on life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And whereas on Tuesday, September 11th, 2001, America was viciously and cowardly attacked by terrorists who attempted to disrupt, destroy, and forever change our democratic form of government and our way of life. And whereas Americans and defenders of freedom everywhere condemn this attack in which thousands of innocent, unarmed Americans lost their lives, and whereas in response to this tragedy, Americans across the country came together in a remarkable spirit of perseverance and carried out countless acts of kindness, generosity, and compassion. And whereas participating in service and remembrance activities in a positive and respectful way to remember the lives lost, pay tribute to those who rose in service, and honor those who continue to serve our country today, including veterans, soldiers, military families, and first responders. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Lisa J. Murata, Mayor of the town of Rocky Hill, do hereby proclaim September 11th, 2021, a day of remembrance. I ask the community and the town to observe this day with appropriate ceremonies and activities to honor the innocent victims who perished as a result of the terrorist attacks of September 11th, 2001. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. We much appreciate the proclamation as well as the kind words. Before we close, I'd like to thank everybody who worked hard to make today's ceremony a success. A special thanks to the two deputy chiefs who had to sit with me on more than one occasion to put this together. Your frustration worked out. You put together a great ceremony. To Walt Sykes for all his last minute helping out, and to everybody who showed up here today. This concludes today's ceremony. We will remain, the town's public safety forces will remain. We will stand a memorial watch, and we will continue with 5 bells. Thank you.